So in this podcast, we are going to be talking about holding edges. But before we get into that, let's just kind of determine when we're going to need them. And essentially, we're going to need them when we're doing three-mode modeling, or three-key smoothing, three-mode. You'll hear all those terms, but it all refers to the same thing. And essentially what that is right now we have all these cubes, and I've just hit 1 on the keyboard. So we're going to leave this guy over here in 1 mode. And if I come over here to this guy here, and I hit 2, you can see that we have a cube and what looks like a sphere underneath it. If I grab this one and hit 3, the cube turns into a sphere. And essentially what is happening is 3 mode, which is this one right here, is Maya's taking the cube and it's smoothing it down into a rounded surface, transforming it into a sphere. So we've got 1 mode, which shows what it looks like, faceted and hard. We've got 2 mode, which shows the caged version of 1 over a smooth version of 3, and then we have 3 mode, the smooth version of the object. So those are the terms and what it means. So when you're thinking about 3 mode, the best way to think about it is if I took this cube, put it in a rock tumbler for a month, what is it going to look like after that? And it's going to look a lot rounder and smoother. Okay. So then where do holding edges come in? So we'll look at these guys here, and we'll kind of talk about holding edges. Now, we know what happens to this one when we hit 3. It completely smooths out. But now we have another cube which is subdivided and has a lot more faces, and let's hit 3 there, and you can see just between these two objects, the amount of smoothing that has happened is a lot less with more edges on there. And then the same goes down the line here. So the more edges we have, the more it's going to keep its shape when we go from 1 mode to 3 mode. The problem is right now is if we look at how many faces and how many verts and how dense the geometry is, it's actually quite dense with 1,200 triangles or 600 faces. So that's not really an efficient way to model, especially when we're dealing with something as simple as a cube. So they came up with holding edges. So what holding edges are specifically placed edges on the model that help hold the shape when you're going from 1 mode to 3 mode. So for our class, we want you guys, and your new best friend is going to be the Insert Edge Loop tool. This guy right here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to put holding edges on this model, or this cube, and you can see what happens when we go from 1 mode to 3 mode. So what we're going to do is look for a plane change, okay? And we have this 90-degree change, and we have this 1 Maya edge running here. So what we want to do is just put an edge on either side of that Maya edge. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then if we kind of turn the camera this way, we've got 1, 2, and we're going to need another one there. So we've got 3, 3, 3. Add one there, and you just kind of go along the model and add them where you need them. Now, you'll notice I'm not being super careful with how close or how far they are apart. I'm just eyeballing it. Maya's going to do the math for you, so you don't have to have it 100% accurate by any means. Just get it as close, eyeball it so it looks how you kind of want it to look. And what we're going to do now is when we hit 3, you can notice that it's kept its shape. It no longer turns into a sphere, so it still stays a cube. So we have held the shape from 1 to 3 mode. So that's what holding edges are going to do for you. Also, look at how much geometry we're using. I'm going to come over here and you can see 600 faces, 1,200 tries. This one here, 108 faces, 216 tries. So it does save a ton of geometry. So when you're dealing with 3 mode modeling, one thing you're always going to want to do is constantly toggle between 1 and 3 mode. You're going to model in 1 and then look to see how it looks in 3 mode. Don't ever go into 3 mode and adjust the edges or anything like that. So for this object, we're using the holding edges to create edge quality. So in other classes, you may have used the bevel tool. For our class, we're going to be primarily using Insert Edge Loop tool to define edge quality, and that's just really the sharpness or roundness of these edges here. Okay, and I don't want you to think of the individual Maya edge, think of it more as the object edge, and you can see the nice little highlight that we have there. Now what do you think is going to happen if we have holding edges and we have them here spaced really close together, and then here we have them spaced really far apart, or at least further apart. So let's go into 3 mode, and you can see that just the distance in between the holding edges can define the edge quality. So we have a lot of control using the same amount of geometry. We can have drastically different edge qualities on an object. Okay, so depending on how sharp or how round you want it, the control is all up to you, and it has to deal with putting in the holding edges on the right place. Now that's where they go with a cube. So let's look at cylinders and see how they kind of work with cylinders. So we'll grab them both here. This is going to be your default. So if we look at the default cylinder settings here, subdivision caps at 1, subdivision axis at 20. And we can hit 3, and let's go back to 20, and then let's hit 3 on the keyboard when we're selected, and you can see how it's smoothing the object. So it doesn't really look great, or does it hold its shape as a cylinder when we're going from 1 to 3 mode. So let's go back into 1 mode, and let's go through the process of adding our holding edges again by using our Insert Edge Loop tool. So we have the 90-degree plane change there, so I've got 2 edges. I need to put another one along the cap, and you'll notice I am unable to do so, and it's just giving me a single vert. The reason this is happening is these are triangles up here, and Maya does not know how to divide a triangle, so it just doesn't do the operation or the tool. So this is why you're going to want to have to change your settings on your cylinder. And the settings you're going to want to go with are going to be 2 caps around the top and 8 subdivisions around. And the reason we want the 2 caps around the top is so we can put in the holding edges. Okay. And let's hit 3 and let's see what it looks like. Nice, and it's doing what we would expect it to do. And the reason we want 8 around as opposed to 20 is 8 is the smallest number to get a perfectly round shape. So if we were to look at this from the top view, you can see it's now perfectly round. There's a slight bit of faceting, but you're probably not going to notice. You're going to want to have either 8 or 16 divisions around. I would suggest go with 8 unless you really need to add more information to a part of it. Then you might want to go with 16, but 8 is probably going to be okay for you. We're not worrying about the triangles at the top. Leave them alone there. But these are the settings that you're going to want to have when you create your cylinder. So let's go ahead and we'll make another one. And just so everyone knows and sees exactly what we're talking about with cylinder settings, radius, height, subdivisions around 8, subdivision caps 2. And this is going to set you up for creating an object, and all you have to do is worry about putting holding edges in there. You don't have to worry about any other of the parameters of the object. And those are the basics of holding edges when we're dealing with cubes and cylinders. And now it's just going to be a matter of applying this to more complex objects.